Welcome to CityWise. I'm your host, Tiana Stevens. CityWise is produced by the City of Rochester to shine a spotlight on city living at its best. Well, a bold new exhibit is coming to Rochester that aims to deconstruct stereotypes by encouraging honest dialogue and expression with the hope of sparking an ongoing community discussion. Question Bridge Black Males is a unique, thought-provoking video project soon to open at the Rochester Contemporary Art Center. And joining us today is Blue C's Executive Director and Curator at ROCO, and Carvin Eisen, General Manager at Rochester Community TV. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
How did this project come about, come to Rochester? How did you first hear of it?
I heard about it when it was at the Brooklyn Museum years ago, and since then it's traveled all around the country. But at that time, I thought it was out of range for us to bring to Rochester. And then just sort of in a stroke of luck, someone called me asking about the exhibition, thinking that it was coming to ROCO. Oh. But it actually was slated for the Rochester Art Center in Minnesota.
Okay.
And I knew how small they were, so
right.
That made me sort of cue into the possibility of actually pursuing it.
Okay.
And then I learned a lot more about it, and thought that it might fit very well into some of the ongoing discussions here, especially over the last year. And it fit well into some of our other programming agendas.
Mm-hmm. And Carvin, what was your first impression?
Well, about 7 months ago, Blue came to me with this idea, and I was sort of shocked, actually, because for one, I hadn't heard about it, but for two, what I understood about the content of the installation, it seemed to be a mismatch for what I understood ROCO to be. So getting to know Blue and talking about it over a period of time, I come to realize that, in fact, it actually is a great match. That's part of the excitement about it, is that it's an unusual pairing, if you will. Mm-hmm. The tendency will be to look at black male and black male culture from one perspective, and not often in the perspective from the perspective of a contemporary art center or museum. Mm-hmm. So as we talked about those issues and moved forward, it turned out to be just an incredibly important idea, and I'm really excited that Rochester Community TV could be part of it.
Right. So, Blue, what does it mean for this exhibit to be in a contemporary art studio?
Well, first, there's a history of this project traveling around. It's found a home at museums and contemporary art centers around the country, so we're hardly, the first contemporary art center to host it. So it's really nothing unique there. But I think specifically one of the reasons why it's found a home, other than the fact that the artists who've conducted the interviews are, first and foremost, they're artists. Mm-hmm. And an art center and a gallery is a neutral space, and it can provide for a dialogue that engages with a lot of different disciplines. The documentary nature of the project, mm-hmm. the sociological aspects of the project, just purely the artistry of the editing and the video presentation. So there are a lot of different elements that can come together in the neutral space, the white walls of the gallery. Mm-hmm.
So Carvin, you're well known in Rochester, and you know Rochester well. Why is this a good fit for our city?
It's a very important fit right now, and I'm glad that it's here, because there needs to be a conversation about the lives and the existence of young men of color, of men in color in general, but particularly of young men in culture in Rochester right now. And this is an extraordinary opportunity, because the tendency will be for people to want to stereotype it. And Blue said something really important just now, about the fact that these men are artists first and foremost. The general culture very often sees them as black first and foremost, men first and foremost. And the ideas of black men, the idea about black men in America is a complicated one. It's very complicated. the culture looks at black men either from the most lofty position, such as the President of the United States, who happens to be a black man, and is has very definite ideas about that, and also at the other end of the spectrum, the worst that people can be and do, right? So this idea of bringing this exhibit to ROCO serves to normalize the behavior of black men, right? Just like any other people concerned about marriage and identity and surfing or whatever it happens to be. And so I think that's why. And more specifically to Rochester, Rochester has challenges. Rochester, according to ACT Rochester, an agency that puts out a report card about the health of Rochester. Rochester is challenged, and these challenges go way back, but they're nonetheless challenging. The concentration of poverty within the neighborhood, within the 14621, 14605 area codes, the concentration of poverty. John Clofus, professor at RIT, talks about the fact that in 14621, 1 out of every 4 black men are involved in the criminal justice system. So that has impact on a neighborhood, that has impact on a community. So for us to be having this discussion through an art gallery, right, is a very, very interesting and important way to move this conversation forward. So again, we're very happy to be involved.
Right, and Blue, you brought a video clip to show exactly what this looks like, what people can expect. Let's take a look at that.
Black man.
Do you want to get out of the situation that you're in?
What is the reluctance for taking responsibility for improving our communities?
Are your children better or worse off as a result of your involvement?
Why wouldn't you be happy with your son being gay?
Why are you so violent?
Why do you have that take mentality?
Why are you afraid of being intelligent?
Why?
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 What I want to know is why?
I believe that we've incorporated a lot of things that are unhealthy to us.
We are supposed to be tough.
I can't let them see no type of sucker.
Along with various other stereotypes.
The level of mentorship in our community is not as strong as it possibly could be.
When I came up, crack was a quick way for a black man to make $1 million.
Sometimes I think because we think we're black, we're some other kind of human beings, but we're just like most other human beings.
And along with this exhibit, there's several opportunities for the community to get involved with discussions. And Carvin, you've got something special planned at RCTV. Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, Blue has an artist space or artist lab, is that what you call it? And we have the opportunity to create an exhibit, a little installation of our own, and it will be about Rochester Community Television, but it'll be about what RCTV is about, not about the station, but what the station does. And so we looked through our archives over the last 10 years, and we have extraordinary video interaction with the community, teaching people the art of media literacy and using production equipment, putting people in circumstances where they can express themselves. So part of our exhibit is a ever-changing, almost visual sculpture of 16 images, 16 frames that have multiple images that keep changing. And I'm very excited. I haven't seen it all together yet, but it seems that it could be interesting. Lots of pictures of young black males and females and white males and Southeast Asian males and the entire makeup of the community. At another place in the lab space, we have a monitor, a large screen monitor, where we'll be playing back some of the different events that happen on the Wednesdays and Friday nights of the schedule. And then on another wall, we have 3 iPads that are dedicated to 3 different ideas, health, education, and employment. So a lot of videos that we've made over the years about the health of the community that address issues of violence and teen pregnancy and physical health. Another one that deals with employment, and another one that deals with gender and sexuality. So that's in essence a lot of it, and we plan to do some interviews in there, and we'll just see. It's I think it's wonderful what Blue has done in terms of extending a conversation about a very important demographic within our community. I mean, when you look at some of the numbers, again, the graduation rates for Black and Latino boys in this community is disastrous. You have the highest rated school district in proximity, 10-minute drive to the lowest performing school district in New York State. So this is an opportunity to talk about a lot of these issues and hopefully bring some clarity and ideas about solutions, really. And that's what we're interested in.
Lou, what can people expect to see when they come into ROCO? How is this exhibit going to be laid out?
Well, the exhibition itself will be quite simple, and those that are familiar with ROCO usually come in and encounter a number of sculptures and photographs or paintings or different elements. The gallery will be dark, and there will essentially just be one very large video projection playing the exhibition loop, which consists of 150 different interviews with Black men, and of course the questions are asked by Black men, and then following interviewees answer those questions. And through editing, the exhibition appears as if the 5 different channels of video content, the men are having kind of a stream of consciousness conversation. So that's essentially the main element of the exhibition. And as we talked about, the interviews conducted by the 4 artists took place all around the country, and they've attempted to interview men of all different ages and life situations, different professions, and different, of course, locations around the country. And so the exhibition has that sociological aspect to it. It has that element of neutrality. And so what we really wanted to do, and what Carvin's describing, is the aspect of this program that makes the exhibition local, that grounds this big, larger, neutral national project in Rochester and makes it specific for all of us, because, as Carvin said, there are many specific issues that Rochester is dealing with. So we can create this dynamic in looking at the national and paying attention to the local. And in addition to Carvin's installation and RCTV's installation, we have this whole series of discussion sessions that we've programmed on Wednesdays and Fridays with everyone from Carvin and Garth Fagan and Lou Von Shepard, who are prominent visual artists and performing artists in the community. And the mayor is going to speak, and the Democrat and Chronicle, and Jim Lawrence at Unite Rochester. They're planning to organize a panel discussion and kick off this whole series of discussions with a panel discussion of local media representatives speaking about how Black men are represented in Rochester through local media. So we're really excited about that element, again, giving it this strong local grounding.
Who do you hope will attend, will come to the discussions, will see the exhibit?
Everyone. The whole
Appropriate
community.
for all ages?
Absolutely. I think that if people are coming with if there are families who are bringing young children, I think if they're not familiar with coming to a contemporary art center, there may be an explicit word or two mixed in there. So I think that parents might want to be aware of that if that's an issue for them. But if they're used to coming to a contemporary art center, there will be nothing out of the ordinary for them.
And I would add that just the general idea of the show itself is breaking down stereotypes. Just the fact that you have an installation that, for some, if you look at it on the surface, is about a subculture within the society, right? As some people will define it. I certainly don't define it that way. But in a contemporary gallery, you're not normally going to see a video installation, even though it's been around for a while. In most places, you're never going to see that. So automatically, you start breaking down stereotypes, because when people think who's going to come to a contemporary art gallery, on both sides of the equation, most people don't think of going to the art gallery to see an installation that focuses on black men and therefore black culture. So that's a busting a stereotype right there, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's good for people from the suburbs who may be predominantly white to come and have that experience. And it's also important for people who in the city who maybe never been to a gallery and have never thought about the experience of being in a gallery. So just the general concept of it and the word of mouth and the attention that's been paid across the media spectrum here is a very good thing, and it just creates an automatic conversation.
What do you hope that people take away from this?
Well, I hope that, as Carvin pointed out, I hope that people who haven't been to an art gallery before, I hope they see that a contemporary art center at least is always presenting different projects that are surprising, that are engaging, that are different, and that hopefully will always raise some new questions in the visitors' minds. So first, that's important. I think the demographic and the different population and community mixings that happen in an art center and surrounding a project like this, I think that everyone will have a different experience with this. I think that though the project specifically focuses on a particular demographic and it's positioned. This project is exclusively interviews and question and answer sessions with black men. The project can be extended to consider the breaking down of demographics and the breaking down of stereotypes for any group. And really that's what the project does in the most broad way. It creates a container and it defines a group of people in a limited way. And then through the men's own questions and answers, it breaks the container all apart. And that goes for any demographic.
Right.
I think that it's, if you've had a chance to see it, I don't know, have you seen it online? You've seen pieces. Yeah. I think it's very mesmerizing, and it sort of lures you in. It sets you up for one experience, but in fact, it's a completely different experience. And I think that the value of that experience is as valuable in terms of what all people are looking for in the world, and these just happen to be men who are black. That's what I hope that people take away from it. And I also hope that it serves to normalize the perception of men who happen to be black, because black men in this culture get stigmatized for so many things. I mean, right now, as we're doing this interview, the face of spousal abuse in America are black male men in the NFL. And I know for a fact, just because of pure numbers, that black men are not the face of spousal abuse in America. But it's just playing out that way. So when people think of that, they think of very bad behavior. And within that is the dynamic that I'm talking about. You have the perception of people who are at the top, who overperform, who are high achievers, and then you have in the same person an individual who is at the bottom, who is recognized for doing something very terrible. What we're about, what I'm interested in, and what I think Question Bridge does is sort of serves to normalize, right? Everybody isn't going to be an NFL athlete or the president of the United States, and everybody is not some lonely, broken-hearted person who is in need of supervision in some way or another. So that's what I really hope that the Conversation Bridge will help to normalize the reality and the perception of men who happen to be black within this culture.
How do you think Question Bridge will resonate with the public in terms of the events that happened in Ferguson?
Well, I think that ultimately people may make some connections there. Of course, we've been planning this exhibition for a long time, so we did not plan this because of those events. But all the more reason for an exhibition like this to encourage people to think differently and to reconsider their their preconceptions and reconsider the ways in which, especially black men, are presented in local media, in all media, and the way people are stereotyped and terrible things happen.
With respect to Rochester and Ferguson, there are many connections, and we could have never known when we were talking about this that this would be so front and center in our national discussion right now, particularly through the media. But there are many connections. The July '64 riots in Rochester are eerily similar to the riots and rebellion, if you will, in Ferguson this past August. The trigger mechanisms are similar, although in Rochester no one was killed. It was a misunderstanding and things blew up. In Ferguson it was certainly a misunderstanding, and the jury literally is still out on what's going to happen there. But they're very similar. There's also another level of similarity which is more profound actually than the riot. The fact that in Ferguson, a white police officer named Darren Wilson shoots a young black man named Michael Brown. In Rochester, almost a month later, a black man named Thomas Johnson III shoots a white police officer named Daryl Pearson. So there's an uncanny connection, a really unusual and actually profound. What causes these two men to do what they do, right? The Johnson shooting Pearson and Wilson shooting Brown. If we can, if Question Bridge could help us get to some understanding is asking for too much, but at least to try to come to terms with that. Why do those things happen? What could be some of the reasons? We don't know what those reasons are. I could speculate on some of those reasons. It might have to do with the concentration of poverty. It might have to do with the public policy decisions that create opportunity and prosperity for some communities and some people, and create abject poverty and dislocation and cognitive dissonance for other people. So, I'm hoping that those kinds of things can be discussed, and this Question Bridge within ROCO gives us that opportunity.
Okay, so you answered one of my questions already, so I'll ask you, Blue, if there was a question that you could ask for Question Bridge, what would it be?
A question that I could ask? I think fundamentally I'm not the person to ask questions for this project. I'm here to facilitate it. I mean, I'm not in the conversation. I'm not, fundamentally.
Okay.
Well, I disagree. I think that you are in the conversation. I think you're in the conversation in ways that you may not be immediately cognizant of or acknowledge, but if it wasn't for your foresight and your willingness to look at something that might be a little bit different from the normal show that you have, and I can't say that I've been to every show in your gallery, so I can't say specifically what's normal, but I can tell you everyone would not have this show. Everyone, for various reasons, people would think just this simple. People would think, well, we're not going to have that show. It might lead to riots. I've heard people have those kind of conversations, right? If you even talk about this subject, because this is toxic stuff in America. This is difficult going. This conversation about race in America is the unfinished work that we have to carry forward.
Definitely.
So I think just by normalizing that, you're able to, you're part of that conversation, whether you want to know it or not, my brother.
Well, being part of the conversation, sure. But to be honest with you, none of those things have ever crossed my mind. I mean, this project is firmly rooted in the contemporary art world. I mean, these artists they happen to be black, but they are doing great work about relevant issues, and artists of all kinds are doing that.
Great. We're so excited to see this opening on October 3rd.
We have to stop now, 'cause I got
do
more
have to stop.
say.
I know you do. Again, for more information on Question Bridge, you can visit rochestercontemporary.org or call 461-2222. Thanks for joining us.